The small village of St. Mary's was shaken one autumn morning when Mr. James Wilson, the wealthy owner of Wilson Manor, was found dead in his study. The room was locked from the inside, with only a single key that Mr. Wilson always kept with him. The window was also locked, and there were no signs of forced entry. Father Brown, the round-faced priest with a peaceful smile, arrived at the manor shortly after the police. Inspector Thompson, who knew the priest's reputation for solving impossible cases, grudgingly allowed him to examine the scene. "Quite strange," Father Brown said, adjusting his glasses as he looked at Mr. Wilson's body slumped over his desk. "The teacup is still warm, but the fire has been cold for hours." The victim's daughter, Sarah Wilson, stood trembling in the doorway. "Father, please help. The police think I did it because I inherit everything, but I loved my father." Inspector Thompson crossed his arms. "Miss Wilson was the only other person in the house last night, and we found this in her room." He held up a small glass vial. "Poison. The same type we suspect killed Mr. Wilson." Father Brown walked around the study, his eyes taking in every detail. The bookshelves were dusty, except for one spot. The carpet had a slight wrinkle near the window, and there was a faint smell of tobacco, though Mr. Wilson never smoked. "Tell me, Miss Wilson, did your father have any enemies?" Father Brown asked gently. Sarah wiped her tears. "Only Mr. Roberts, his business partner. They had a falling out last week over some missing money, but he couldn't have gotten in. The doors were all locked, and Father always checked them himself before bed." Inspector Thompson snorted. "Roberts has an alibi. He was at the Green Dragon pub all evening, witnessed by a dozen people." Father Brown picked up the teacup and sniffed it. "Interesting. The tea leaves are arranged in an unusual pattern." He then examined the fireplace, running his fingers through the cold ashes. "Miss Wilson," he said suddenly, "did your father ever mention a secret passage?" Sarah's eyes widened. "No, but this house is hundreds of years old. There are lots of stories." Father Brown walked to the bookshelf and pulled a large red volume. With a creaking sound, the shelf swung open, revealing a narrow passage. "How did you know?" Inspector Thompson demanded. "The dust," Father Brown explained. One section of the shelf was cleaner than the rest, suggesting frequent use. "But there's more to this mystery than a secret passage." He led them through the passage, which ended in a small room filled with old furniture. On a table lay scattered papers and an empty bottle, identical to the one found in Sarah's room. "Ah," Father Brown said softly. "Just as I thought. Inspector, I believe you'll find Mr. Roberts' alibi isn't as solid as it seems. The bartender at the Green Dragon is his cousin. But how could he have poisoned Father?" Sarah asked. "The tea was made fresh last night." "He didn't poison the tea," Father Brown said. "He poisoned the teapot. Mr. Wilson always had his evening tea at exactly 8 o'clock. Roberts knew this from his frequent business visits. He used the secret passage, which he had discovered during those visits, to enter the study earlier yesterday and add the poison to the teapot. Then he went to establish his alibi at the pub." "But the vial in Miss Wilson's room?" Thompson interjected. "Planted, of course. Roberts needed a scapegoat. He used the passage again last night to plant the evidence. The carpet wrinkle by the window was a deliberate red herring. He wanted us to think someone had come in that way." "And the cold fireplace?" Sarah asked. "Another clue. Your father always kept his fire burning on cold nights. But Roberts doused it after using the passage, not wanting the light to show under the bookshelf and reveal his presence. The tobacco smell was from his cigarette. He was nervous and smoked while waiting in the passage. Inspector Thompson frowned. "It's a clever theory, Father, but we need proof." Father Brown smiled. "Check the papers on this table. I believe you'll find documents showing that Roberts had been embezzling from the company. Mr. Wilson discovered this last week, hence their falling out. And the bottle here will match the poison used to kill him." Later that evening, after Roberts had been arrested and confessed, Sarah sat with Father Brown in the garden. "How did you really know about the passage?" she asked. "Human nature," Father Brown replied simply. "People who commit crimes often try to make them seem impossible, locked rooms, perfect alibis. But the truly impossible is usually simple once you understand the human heart. Roberts wanted us to focus on the locked door and window to make the crime seem impossible. In doing so, he revealed his method. The more impossible a crime appears, the more likely it is that the solution is quite simple." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "And the tea leaves?" Father Brown's eyes twinkled. "Roberts didn't know your father always stirred his tea 3 times clockwise." The leaves were stirred counterclockwise, a small detail, but telling. Sometimes the smallest things reveal the largest truths. As Father Brown walked home in the gathering dusk, he reflected that it was not so much the clues that had solved the crime, but understanding the pride and desperation that had driven Roberts to commit it. For in the end, every mystery of circumstance was really a mystery of the human heart.